So they say a man approached their U.S. Border Patrol officers with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun. The officers then attempted to disarm the suspect, but the armed suspect violently resisted. More details on the armed struggle are forthcoming. So I'm imagining they're reviewing whatever footage they have of this, the sequence of this event. Okay, so the statement goes on to say, this is again from Homeland Security, fearing for his life and the lives and safety of fellow officers, an agent fired defensive shots. Medics on scene immediately delivered medical aid to that subject, but he was pronounced dead at the scene. The suspect also had 2 magazines, no identification. This looks like a situation where an individual wanted to do maximum damage and massacre law enforcement. Again, this is from Homeland Security. They also add that about 200 rioters arrived at the scene and began to obstruct and assault law enforcement on the scene. Crowd control measures were deployed for the safety of the public and law enforcement, and the situation is evolving. And that is what we're watching now, is the aftermath. You can hear those flashbangs going off as protesters continue to taunt those federal law enforcement agents that are on the ground. State police has also now been sent in by the governor's office, but the governor is calling on the president to basically take ICE out of his state. They're declaring that an unlawful assembly. I want to bring in Governor Tate Reeves of the great state of Mississippi. And Governor, we were supposed to have you on to talk about this snowstorm that is hitting your state right now. But I want to ask you about what you're watching on TV with us. This is incredible pictures from Minneapolis, just absolute sheer chaos. I can't tell who is in control of the situation. If you were the governor of this state right now, if this was happening in Mississippi, what would you do?
Well, thanks for having me on. And I will tell you that it is imperative that in a situation like this, because look, many of these protesters, what they want is chaos. It is incredibly important that the leaders of the city, the leaders of the state, include and involve city police, state police, and federal law enforcement to maintain law and order. It seems very clear that there was an individual who went up to a law enforcement officer with a weapon, which presumably was loaded. And it doesn't matter if you're in Minneapolis, Minnesota, or Mississippi, it is a bad idea to approach law enforcement in such a manner. And so I think that to get control of the city, to ensure that we have law and order, the mayor and the governor need to step up and lead. They need to support law enforcement that is simply trying to enforce our federal laws. And regardless of what protesters want the federal laws to be, the previous administration allowed 10 million illegal aliens into our country, many of them obviously criminals, and they are continuing to create criminal acts. And you're going to get arrested for that in America, and you should. And so to watch this scene with individuals flying American flags upside down, it's really hard to watch. And I know there are a lot of people across America that are praying for our law enforcement officers there in Minneapolis and across the country right now.
You know, what they're trying to do right now is basically secure the scene. I mean, we've got a deadly shooting here. We have to have an investigation. And you've got protesters screaming on the ground in front of us, emotional, throwing trash cans, barricading roads. I mean, really trying to disrupt really lawful activity that's going on. I wonder, you know, we're watching some of these state police officers who are clearly, I mean, they're sent there to try to make sure that people don't cross the boundaries of this investigation. But we're not seeing them really make any arrests. Should they be involved in making arrests? And who else would you have sent in there to help federal authorities?
Well, obviously you have a scene there which is hard to watch. The fact of the matter is that there was obviously, by all accounts, a law enforcement officer discharged a weapon. An individual is deceased. There needs to be an investigation. So all of these politicians that are trying to create a narrative. That's your words, not mine, but they're trying to create a narrative without any of the facts. The law enforcement on the scene, it appears to me, are trying to secure the scene so that that investigation can occur, so that we can get facts as to exactly what happened and why the weapon was discharged. And the protesters were trying not to allow the federal law enforcement vehicles even through, so that they could get the investigation done and started. And I think it's making the situation worse, not better. Again, local law enforcement, which would be city police, state law enforcement, which in our state would be state troopers. And if that is not enough manpower to secure the scene, then the National Guard should be called up, because in America, law and order is incredibly important. And I think we have seen in Minneapolis over the last couple of weeks, and I think quite frankly we've seen it before the last couple of weeks, that the kinds of protests that are going on make that place less safe, not more safe.
I mean, based on what you're looking at right now with me, would you have sent in the National Guard already?
Well, again, every situation is different, but there is no doubt that the federal law enforcement officers, the ICE officers, the Border Patrol officers that are attempting to maintain law and order, that are attempting to arrest those who are known criminals that have come into our country illegally, they need the support of local, state, and federal resources. And if it takes deploying the National Guard to do that, then yes, absolutely the Guard should be deployed.
You know, that's the whole point of this, right? That's the whole back and forth between Democrats and Republicans, the protesters and ICE agents. Democrats want ICE to leave. The governor wants ICE to leave. But Department of Homeland Security says, look, if you just work with us, if we could just work together, we would be able to go and get these illegal immigrants, you know, in a safer, more coordinated manner, right? I mean, they're conducting lawful arrests. These are people that they're looking for have active detainers out for their arrest. This would not be happening, do you think, if the state would just cooperate with ICE?
Well, the notion that politicians would say that the federal law enforcement officers should not enforce federal law is just silly. It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. The fact of the matter is, law enforcement job is to enforce the laws. It is to maintain law and order, and they should do that whether it's in Mississippi or in Minneapolis, Minnesota. It doesn't matter. We have federal laws that have to be adhered to, and we know that there are literally 10 million individuals that the previous administration allowed into our country, some of whom are murderers, some of whom are other criminals, and there needs to be, they're going to get arrested, and that's just what's going to happen under this new administration, largely because the President Trump, ran on doing exactly this. He ran on securing our border because he believes, and as he should, that a nation without borders is not a nation at all.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Governor, for jumping in on this breaking news. I know you've got a winter storm and you've got people to look out for. So thanks for jumping in and helping us understand the situation.